it's me, Miss Flavell. I'm back, and it's really nice to see some of you at school, but it's even nicer to know that I can be talking to all of you out there over this YouTube video because I miss you all greatly, and I cannot wait to see you all again as soon as is safe. In the meantime, I've been thinking really hard about what to record for you guys over YouTube, and I thought I would share with you one of my absolute favourite things in the world to do, and that is reading. Now, this book I have chosen is an absolute lesson in not judging a book by its cover, because, take one look at this, it's even upside down. No. Tales for Bedtime. Now, it's from the 1970s. I think it's from, let's have a check, 1985. It's not quite as old as me, not quite. But the illustrations are very what we call dated, which means they look quite old-fashioned. And the blurb is virtually non-existent. So if you were looking at this book and judging it by its cover, you might think, well, it might be a bit babyish for me. The illustrations are very strange and off-putting. I'm going to put it back down. But I would counsel against that because this is my absolute favourite book in the whole world. And you are never, ever too old for a bedtime story. And if you want to, like Mrs. Posting said, you should snuggle down, get comfy, and listen to this fantastic story. Now, you might be thinking, Miss Flavell, why are you reading us a baby's book? As I said, you're never too old for a bedtime story. I like to read when I go to bed. Sometimes I read in the middle of the night. I read all the time, and I read to the baby. And she really likes reading, and she can't even see that words are words yet. She kind of does that to them and turns them over. So you're never too young for a bedtime story either. I digress. Let's get started. The title of this story is The Tree's Secret. There we have a very wintry, very foggy scene. Maybe this is a little bit of a horror story. Maybe it's a little bit supernatural. Let's see. There was a thick fog everywhere in the forest, thick November fog. It was so dense that any bird flying through the fog would certainly have crashed into the rock face on the side of the hill. It was all overgrown with moss and bushes, and in a crevice in the rock grew a small tree. It was a maple tree. Now this introduction is fabulous. The use of punctuation, dashes, hyphens, the way it sets the scene is an absolute top-notch example of an opening for a story. Cold fog, silence. Everything in the forest was making ready for winter sleep. The animals had long since hidden in their burrows. The beetles had slipped underneath the bark of the trees, and the lizards had gone underground. It was the most sensible thing to do. Soon it would start snowing. Everything was preparing to sleep. The little maple on the rock was also bare. Its leaves had dried up and fallen. It closed its eyes wearily, and as it was dropping off to sleep, it remembered the time when it was younger and smaller. It thought about how it had once been a seed blown in the wind. Was it the tree's fault the wind had dropped it here in the crevice? Not at all. The wind doesn't ask seeds where they want to be put down. It just takes them somewhere, and that's it. Trees have to grow where the seeds are dropped by chance. So it was that the maple had put down its roots in the rock. It didn't really have enough room, or enough soil, or enough moisture. Never mind, it said to itself, holding on tight. At least I've got a lovely view. The tree grew as green as it could manage, but it stayed small. Its top was lopped off by some storms more than once, so that it was always short and bent. Never mind, it said, and kept hanging on. And there are some beetles, look, enjoying the autumn leaves. And there's a lovely lizard. The more it grew, the harder life was for the maple. Its branches were crooked and its leaves hard and dry. Never mind, it would say, never mind. Often at night, when the big trees down below were fast asleep, it would gaze up at the black sky and the shining stars. A stream gurgled and splashed at the foot of the rock. You could feel even up there above how fresh it was beside the water, and how good and black the soil must be down there. Those were sad and lonely nights for the tree. Then, suddenly, in the spring, something unexpected happened. Late one afternoon, there was an oops and an oops, and something flew into the maple and hid in its branches. It was a pair of nightingales, quite out of breath. A nightingale is a kind of bird with a very, very beautiful singing voice. "We're looking for a place to build our nest," they explained. "Would you like to have us here, Maple?" Now, that's not a very beautiful voice, but I thought it was high-pitched and quite bird-like, so just go with it. The maple was overjoyed. "Am I not too small?" it asked uncertainly. "That doesn't matter. The important thing is that no one can get near." "But I am very short," said the maple. "That's good," replied the nightingales. "At least the wind won't uproot you." "But I'm terribly bent," the maple went on. "Just what we need," said the nightingales, and they began to fetch things to make their nest. They built it into a stout fork in one of the branches. The maple deliberately curved round these twigs and gripped the nest so that not even the strongest wind could blow it down. Then, when all was ready, the nightingales lined the nest with down feathers, and the mother bird laid little brown, green spotted eggs in it. There were 4 of them. She sat on them lightly and puffed out her feathers to them so that the eggs were as snug as if they were in a feather pillow. Night after night, the father nightingale perched on the highest branch of the maple and sang and sang. His songs were for his mate sitting on the nest. Why did he sing these songs? Because he was fond of her, and because the weather was fine, and because it was spring. He also sang because he was looking forward to his children. The songs were for the mother nightingale, but the moon and the stars and the rock listened too. The stream listened, and so did the big trees down below. Yes, the big trees were quite silent, and they listened too. The whole forest listened. "A nightingale," they said to themselves. "We have a nightingale in the forest. Where is the nest? Where can it be?" But the maple did not tell. The nest was the maple's secret. It rocked it and held it tight and made a good roof over it when it rained. There wasn't another tree that could have looked after the nest so well, since not one had such dense branches or such tough leaves. And there are the nightingales and some leaves. Those are maple leaves, and the maple leaf can be found on the Canadian flag. Just a bit of trivia there for you. The maple was cheered by the sweet song of the nightingale all through these spring nights. When the young birds hatched, the tree was delighted. It rocked them more than ever, and sometimes it whispered merry little stories to them when they were left there alone, for sometimes their mother had to fly off and help in the search for food. "Tell us a story, Maple," the chicks would peep as soon as they were alone. "Then be quiet so no one will hear you." And the tree had to think of something quickly. "That story was too short," the little birds would squeak, but their parents would soon arrive to feed them. The moment they flew off again, the little birds would ask, "Rock us, Maple, rock us." So the maple would rock them, but gently, so they didn't fall out. Lovely use of a little parenthetic phrase there, but gently. The punctuation in this story is phenomenal. Whenever the young nightingales fidgeted about too much in the nest and leaned over the edge, the maple would hold them back. And when they tried to scramble out of the nest, the tree would push them back in. "You're still too small," it would say. But the little birds got braver and braver. One day they hopped right out of the nest and perched on the branch. Then they looked down and began to be frightened. They cheeped with fear. "Don't look down," the maple advised them. "Look at my branches, hop along here and hop along here. Don't worry, I shan't drop you." There's the presumably female nightingale on the nest. I don't know much about their colouring and plumage. Maybe one of you could find out for me. And there is a beautiful picture of the moon and the male nightingale, because they said that the male nightingale sang its song, so that must be the male one because that's got darker plumage, and the female has lighter plumage. So the illustrator has really paid good attention to what nightingales look like. The little birds hopped along these comfortable dense branches. How glad the maple was now that its branches were so slim. At least it was easy for tiny claws to grip onto them. "Now jump here and here," the tree told the baby birds. So the little nightingales climbed from branch to branch, and when they had to jump a bit further, they used their wings to help them, which is how they learned to fly. When they had practiced like that for a while, their parents would take them on short flights, from stone to stone, from ledge to ledge, among the bushes, and then whir right down into the forest below. Summer passed, and they really enjoyed themselves. When August came and the rowan berries began to ripen, you couldn't tell young nightingales from the old ones. They had long since stopped sleeping in the nest, and now they roosted in a row on a branch. Now the old nightingales would speak more and more often of some hot land far away, where palms and orange trees grow, and it was clear they felt like flying there for a visit. Ah well, it became more plain. One night the nightingale said to the maple, "Please look after our nest during the winter, Maple, and we shall return in the spring." The maple promised to look after the nest. Thank you, Maple. It was so pleasant here," said the mother bird. Thank you, Maple, thank you, Maple, thank you, Maple, thank you, Maple, said the little ones, and they had a last hop around on the branches. Then the nightingale parents sat side by side on the highest branch and gazed at the sky as if they could see something there. And then there's a semicolon. The young ones went to sit beside them, and the maple knew what it meant. "Goodbye, Maple," said the old birds, and flew away. "Goodbye, goodbye, Maple," called the young ones, and went after their parents. That was that. They were gone. Now the birch leaves in the forest began to turn yellow, and the beeches went golden, then brown. Then the rain came, and then the leaves fell, and it grew colder and colder. In the morning the branches of the trees and the face of the rock would be quite white with frost. "A good thing the nightingales have gone," thought the maple. "However would they stand this weather?" The maple made ready for winter. It drew its sap deep into its roots. It looked contentedly at the tips of its branches where it had fine new buds, furled tightly and stuck together, ready for next spring. Everything was in order. If a passerby could have seen through the dense fog, he would only have seen a damp, black rock with a small, bare tree growing out of its side. He would probably have thought it was a sad sight, and he would have been wrong. The maple was going happily to sleep, looking forward to spring. While it slept, its branches held on tight to the nightingale's nest, its great secret, the most wonderful secret a tree can have. And there's the unfortunately slightly creepy picture of the tree, but it is very lovely. And those nightingales flying off to spend winter somewhere warm. Now at the moment our school looks a bit bare, but if you can think about that story and all of the lovely things that come in spring once everything can flower again, then you know that our school will look absolutely smashing eventually, sometime soon, especially when you lot are back in it.